Yesterday, we discussed the conclusion of former Major League Baseball player Trevor Bauer's lawsuit stemming from an alleged sexual assault and Bauer's recent video in which he released his side of the story with receipts. Joining me now to discuss that is Bauer's accuser herself, Lindsay Hill. Lindsay, I mentioned Bauer's video in which he provided some receipts that, I'm going to be honest with you, make you look like a clout chaser, or I know some people are calling you a cleat chaser because admittedly you were chasing after several high-profile, wealthy baseball players. Trevor says everything was completely consensual. He also released these text messages that came out in court indicating that you had planned the whole thing out. So I want to read some of these texts from you to a friend between the two of you before you met Trevor, this one. Next victim, star pitcher for the Dodgers. Okay. Victim is an interesting choice of words. I'm going to allow you a chance to explain yourself. But after you agreed to meet, you asked your friend what you should steal. Your friend answered his money. He says, another one from you to a friend, I'm going to his house Wednesday. I already have my hooks in. You know how I roll. With a screenshot in which you told him, tryouts don't scare me, Bauer. Pick a day and I am there. Here are some more after you and Trevor met up. Net worth is $51 million, to which your friend responds, bitch, you better secure that bag. Your text, need daddy to choke me out, being an absolute whore to try to get in on his $51 million. You say this wasn't a setup. How can you expect anyone to believe that?
We all know it was a setup. She is known for chasing baseball players for money, and the text messages confirm that. But believe all women first, destroy men's careers first, then discuss the facts at the end.
That's a great question. I really appreciate you having me on to even have this conversation. Obviously, there's a lot going on around this, so I really appreciate people who are asking questions about it. The first thing I want to say is, I think that Trevor did this intentionally with the text messages and how he framed this video. There's several things in it that are not correct. And I just want to start out by saying, it's so valid for people to question those text messages. But the root of the problem here is that he is presenting this as one conversation, when in reality he had thousands of messages to choose from, took those, made it look sequential, which it was not. There is no combined screenshot of those things going on one after the other. And as I said last night as well, there's no text message that ever exists. Otherwise he would have, put it out there, combining, anything about a setup through rough sex, finances all in one. Those were handpicked, and they were from multiple different conversations all before we met up. And I think that the video in general doesn't even talk about what actually happened between us two, which is what would have come out during a jury trial. These were all messages that happened before. And then, of course, the video is so valid as well for people to ask questions about. But I do think that video was entirely misleading. He also references the restraining order hearing, which people also have questions about. He says that he was cleared of any wrongdoing, which is actually incorrect. In our civil case, the judge had actually ruled that he had not been cleared of any wrongdoing, and that was a federal court judge. So I want to get to the domestic violence restraining order hearing as well, but so you're saying that it's misleading because you're admitting that you did talk about rough sex and wanting rough sex. You did talk about him needing to choke you out. You did talk about stealing his money, but it's misleading because he put them together in the same video as if you had said it in the same conversation when in fact it was separate conversations, correct? That's why it's misleading? Correct, and as well as not showing, the messages that occurred after where it discusses it strictly in the term of, being a baseball wife or something like that.
Or something like that. Okay. I'm just curious if the statistical likelihood of you texting your friend premeditated texts saying you wanted him to choke you out and steal his money, take his money, and him actually choking you out, and those two things not being related.
Of course it's related. That's why we call it evidence. She won't tell the truth no matter what, but let's watch how Sara Gonzales is going to cook her and bring her to reality, despite the fact of her denying everything.
It's a really, really valid question. And like I said, I think you would need to look through each conversation. Those were handpicked. But I can, like I said last night, completely own the fact that those were overly sarcastic, overly inappropriate to some may seem. And it does give off that impression about clout chaser and totally attention-seeking behavior. But I just feel that they have, nothing to do with what actually took place. But it does cause a lot of questions as to why I was, seeking Trevor out. But at the end of the day, there was nothing about a setup with violence and all of this stuff and getting financial gain. It was strictly, a 25 or however old I was at the time, girl trying to get attention from those things and phrasing it in a sarcastic way before we met.
Okay, so I've got a couple other questions on that. So you said in court that he sexually assaulted you on 2 different encounters, and you say the first time that you say he choked you unconscious. Clearly, the insinuation is you didn't like it, because now you're calling it an assault. But why did you make the drive back to L.A. to meet back up with him a second time if this man had just assaulted you by your own account?
I think that's a really good question. How I phrased it and how I in the past is that I was so embarrassed by the first encounter that I felt something, deep in me to go and take the power back and to be better and to be what he wanted in a sense. And
what? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
So I don't know. There's been a lot of, through all the processes, witness experts on the psychology of what happens when you are assaulted, XYZ. But there was something in me that felt like I needed to make it better. And
Stop it. Get some help.
In a sense.
Okay. But you texted Trevor before you met him, telling him you liked rough sex. Then you texted him after your first sexual encounter with him, which you now call an assault. And according to court records, you told him after that sexual encounter that you had, quote, never been more turned on in your life. That's not really something that someone says when they were just assaulted.
Gotcha, bitch.
I think it's a super valid question. Everything you're asking me is a super valid question.
I agree. That's why I'm asking them.
Totally. And I think that I'm not, that's what expert witnesses are for in court in terms of the psychology behind that and responses to abuse and things like that. But like I said, I was just trying to make myself feel better about myself after what had happened the first time. After the first time I left without any markings on my body, my face was fine. I could go to work. And I thought that the second time, would be like the first time minus the things I told him I was not comfortable with.
Yeah, so you mentioned the markings on your body. I want to play a portion of his video in which he plays I would say, interesting video of you in his bed. Watch.
In August of 2021, Lindsay Hill's claims were heard in court. And during those legal proceedings, critical information was deliberately and unlawfully concealed from me and my legal team. Information like this video, which was taken by Lindsay Hill herself the morning after she claimed she was brutally attacked, emotionally traumatized, and desperate to get away from me. And now we have the metadata, so there can be no dispute. It was taken mere minutes before she left my house on the morning of May 16th, 2021, without my knowledge or consent, of course. In it, you can see her lying in bed next to me while I'm sleeping, smirking at the camera without a care in the world, or any marks on her face. I think it paints a pretty clear picture of what actually happened the evening of May 15th and why the video was originally concealed from us.
Lindsay, I think there are a lot of sexual assault survivors who would say you don't look traumatized there and you don't look beaten. And this is allegedly after you say that he brutally attacked you and you had bruises all over your body. You had bruises all over your face. I don't see any bruises there. And I certainly don't see a woman who's just been traumatized by something horrible.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Again, super valid. I think that I woke up that morning and the best way to explain that video is I hadn't seen my entire body yet. I had no idea what had happened considering, I was unconscious for most of it. I had no idea what had happened to my full body.
But if it was that severe, wouldn't you already feel pain? Wouldn't you already have bruises on your face? I mean, you say that he punched you in the face, but where are the bruises?
Yeah, so that's something that has not, been publicly released or he won't talk about. But over and over again in this process, we have handed him pictures that were taken between 20 and 30 minutes right after that video was taken of the bruising starting to develop, of the scratching. And it has been time and time again verified through metadata. It was a matter of being in the correct lighting, the spacing to take the right thing. And another difference is, iPhone camera versus a Snapchat recording and things like that. So there is solid bulletproof evidence of those bruising marks, scratches, things that were provided to their team from day one.
So it was a very brutal attack in which you were very bruised, but we couldn't see the bruises because of the lighting. I want to move on here. So Trevor mentioned in his clip that you withheld evidence, more evidence, and later posted on Twitter after being asked if your lawyers were aware that you withheld evidence. He said, "It appears her lawyers had the evidence the entire time." Speaking specifically about the video of her laying in bed next to me with no marks on her face the morning after she claims I brutally attacked her, an email containing that video was sent to her attorney before the domestic violence restraining order hearing in 2021, and it was never turned over to us. Perhaps that's why he insisted on adding his name to the released parties section in the settlement agreement. There was also a 12-day span of texts between Lindsay and two of her closest friends immediately following the incident that were deleted. We asked for them in discovery for the restraining order hearing, and they were not turned over. Why did your lawyers withhold what seems to be very exculpatory evidence for Trevor?
You know what? That's something my lawyers would have to answer, and that's his issue with them. Like I said, there was an email. I provided absolutely everything I had. And a key fact about this that no one does know about is that that video was actually the first thing that I handed over to Pasadena police, and it's on body cam footage. So I did everything to hand over all of that stuff. It was my first time in a legal proceeding, and I did what I was told when I was told to do it.
Yeah, you mentioned that you went to the police. Why wasn't he arrested, do you think? Or, no charges were brought on him. Why do you think that is?
That only the Pasadena Police Department would know that. What I do know is that I handed over my phone and computer because I had nothing to hide, and I interviewed with them. I did everything they told me. We have a 28-minute pretext call that's recorded that's never been public. That really explains a lot. And what I do know is that Trevor refused to talk to the police, refused to give him their phones. So I'm not really one to speak on that. I just had to let it play out.
You don't want to speak on that because you are a liar. And that's shocking. Because we have in our society a lot of people like her, ready to jump on anyone with a bunch of lies just to get some money. And the worst is that they make it more difficult for real victims to be believed. I hope this case, like Johnny Depp case, will teach all of us something precious. Be aware of your surroundings. Never act under the influence of emotions, libido, or lust. Always observe, think, and analyze before you act.
Yeah, I mean, if I was accused by a sexual partner who had given consent to have sex with that I was now being accused of sexual assault, I probably wouldn't talk to the police at that time either. Why didn't you turn over the text with you and your closest friends? Is this 12-day span? Why didn't you turn those over?
They really focus on that a lot. And like I said, I did everything in my power. I sat up there and I testified and said, I don't have access to this on this backup. Can you please get them from Pasadena police? I would have given everything, like I said, from day one. And so I was really an advocate for getting all those texts because I knew that there was nothing in there that would,
and the police wouldn't release them to you?
I'm not sure. I was the one, like I said, who said, in court, please get them from the Pasadena police because I do not have access to them.
But if the Pasadena police can give it to them, they could give it to you as well, no?
I don't know. I mean, I asked my lawyers. I don't know if Trevor's team had done that as well. I just did. I was so overwhelmed at that time, but I was more than willing to cooperate with absolutely everything.
So you said last night in your interview with fellow Blaze TV host Alex Stein that you said fully prepared to take this case to trial. But Trevor says that your attorneys approached him multiple times trying to settle after all of this incriminating evidence for you was released. Is he lying?
I actually have no idea how the settlement came about. Again, that would be, I don't think people really understand that I'm pretty far removed from the process of lawyer versus lawyer.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, surely you give your consent as to whether or not you want to settle.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. And actually is a really big bummer that this case is not going to trial because all of the evidence that has not been public, including the other accusers and all of those things.
I don't want to talk about the other accusers because I'm here to focus on you. If they want to talk, I'd love to talk to them, but this is a separate issue here. You agreed to the settlement, but now you're saying it's a bummer it's not going to court. I don't understand how those two things jive.
I think that I really had to take into consideration my mental health. This litigation's never ending. And I think the bigger question, and Alex said it last night, if he really wanted, to clear his name or, press charges for fraud, which he did not do with me, he did with the other woman. I think the bigger question is, why did Trevor settle? And why doesn't he want to take this all the way? And it's because of the chance of cross-examination and all the evidence for my case.
I mean, I think that that's an assumption that you're making, right? I would say maybe Trevor wanted to settle because you're talking about your mental health. Couldn't it be that he was tired of going through it as well, especially if his case is to be made that he's being falsely accused of something he didn't do? You both consented to rough sex. You had a safe word, and you didn't use it. And you don't want your name to be tarnished for all this time, and you just want it to go away. I think that it's terrible that you would say he didn't want to settle because he didn't want all of this to come out when you yourself also settled. I don't think that that's a fair statement at all.
You got me.
So my last question, as part of the settlement, you disclosed that you received $300,000 from an insurance company. How did you con an insurance company into paying you any money? And does that money just go to your lawyers or does any of it go to you?
Yeah, I wish I could speak more into that, but I am prohibited from talking about that part. So I wish I could go more into detail, but I don't believe I would agree with you on the word con at all. So,
okay.
So I'll go into that more.
Yeah, I mean, Lindsay, I don't like it when men are falsely accused of doing things and they have their livelihoods taken from them. And it's done by someone who is, speaking out of both sides of their mouth saying, well, I wish that this had gone to court because if it did, boy, let me tell you all the evidence that you could be seeing, but now you can't. And also then settled the case. I don't find that to be credible. I will leave you with this. I want you to learn your lesson on pursuing public figures, and I would ask that you stop sliding into my friend Alex Stein's DMs.
Got him!
Thank you very much, Lindsay.
I really respect you, and that's nice to end that way. I really do respect what you have to say, and I hope there's a day that you can see the real truth of the situation.
All right, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
I have so much more to say on that. But we've got to go to a break. I wish I could see the truth in it too. It's just that all the evidence that I'm seeing, which has been provided, isn't quite good for Lindsay.